guys, this is Edna with Squire Photography. Today I am going to go over some before and after photographs with you. I want to show you what I do for my clients, and if you guys are photographers, what you can do for your clients. And if you guys are brides that have gotten your photo back from your photographer and you didn't love them, and this is a way that you might learn some of the language that we use so that you can let your photographer know what you want done. Normally these types of corrections and photoshopping effects are and can be extra, especially some of the body modification and stuff like that. For me, I included in all of my albums. I include absolutely all perfect photographs that go into an album, whether they need body modification, retouching of the face, acne, brightening up teeth and eyes, and removing things from the background and things like that. So I'm going to start with this photograph. This is the photograph raw, straight from the camera. It's slightly dark so that we can save the detail on the dress in case we need to. And then we brighten it up a little bit. Here, I went in with a program called Viveza, and I darkened the sky. I opened up the shadows here on the trees. I opened up the shadows on the girls' faces, because a lot of times people get married and they don't realize that the sun is coming from this direction. You see how the sun is coming from back here and the guys' faces are lit, but the girls' faces are not. So that's something that, unless you're popping a very strong flash, and that can look really flashy and not unnatural, something that your photographer can do is open up those shadows a little bit. And then I went in and added more vibrancy and contrast. I like a program called RadLab to do this. We also probably did a little bit of body modification, but not just, this girl is really thin, so just a tiny bit there you can see, and I added a little flow to the dress. And that's that image. Here you see that this happens all the time with brides. You have a little bit of spillage that comes from those deeply corseted dresses. And here I can scoot this in with Liquify and touch up this section. So here is the before again. And that's all she needed. She's a beautiful bride. And we liquefied that over, and I retouched this area here and cloned this area so that it looks really good. Here is a bride in front of the beach. It's a beautiful photograph. It's a beautiful time of day. We had some flash photography, some flash coming off to the left side. She's facing away from the camera. And then I thinned her up just a little bit. We use Liquify, large brush strokes of Liquify to bring this in. Liquify is a tool that's in Photoshop. And then I added an antique effect. So this is a color wash and texture. Do you see up here where there's a bunch of texture on the edges of the image? I added texture to this image and removed some of the texture from the middle, but did keep that color and warmth and wash that's over that image. Here is again a little bit of the bride's dress is a little messed up and she's a little heavy. Everybody wants to lose weight but before their wedding, when not everybody does. So usually I like to help my brides out and just kind of tuck. I don't want people to look completely different. I think it's ridiculous. But everybody would love a little bit smaller waist size, a little bit thinned out arms, and that's what I do. I don't want it to be ridiculous. I don't want people not to look like themselves. I'm not going to make this girl a size 6. I'm going to just thin her out a little bit, give her a little curve just to have a little bit of a nicer composition in this image. And if a bride doesn't want it, I won't do anything, but most people do. And I converted this image to black and white. Here, same thing. This bride has some problem areas. It would look better if we brought this tummy in a little bit, maybe slimmed out the legs a little bit, and that's what I did here. Cleaned up this problem area here with some cloning and liquefying. That's in Photoshop. Liquefied this area here in Photoshop, thinned out the legs here. So here's the before and the after. And then here, this is an older thing that I would do. I think it's lost a little bit of its appeal nowadays because photoshopping effects change so much drastically from, every couple of years something changes and this falls out of style. This has probably fallen a little out of style, which is a slightly desaturated image. So half color, half black and white with an opacity with the black and white on top of it. In Photoshop, you just drop your opacity and it gives you a half black and white, half color image. Here again, this section, very, very common. And I don't want my clients to be worried about what poses they can and can't do. That takes away from the fun of the day. I want them to do any pose they want, and I want them to have fun. And, not everything's always going to look amazing, but we can always go in and retouch those areas. So that gives you an idea of how that can be retouched and cleaned up. And all of this was with cloning in Photoshop. And then I brightened the image, added some contrast and vibrancy to that. Here is an image where because of the pose and the way the bride has her arm up against her side there, it makes the arm a little bit more bulgy here. And the image was taken in shade, so the image is a little bit blue. Any image that's taken in shade is going to be a little bit blue. You see blue undertones here on the dress. So then I warmed up the image, thinned out the arm, thinned out the waist a little bit, just a little bit. See that difference? It's just a little bit, but it does make a difference in the album and at the end with all the images. So added a lot of vibrancy here, added some warmth, and I really love this image. Here is another one that I shot with using off-camera flash. This is at Huntington Beach Pier. And I love this image, but the dress is a little bit big and a little wrinkled and a little saggy. And so I also want to bring in the waist a little to make her look a little bit more vavoom. So here, lifted the arms a little bit with Liquify, brought in the waist a little bit. So here's the before, here's the after, and here I darkened up the sky using that program Viveza. I brought in some structure to the dress, lessened up that area here where things just look a little bit baggy. And this image is beautiful. It was shot at Del Prado in San Diego with this gorgeous bride. It had a gorgeous high-end wedding. And this image, she didn't need any body modification or anything. We just made this image sepia toned. This is also a beautiful image where I went in and added red to the leaves. And you can do this really easily with a program called Viveza. Well, not super easily, but a little bit more easy than having to mess with, selecting the color and this and that and doing layers. And, it starts to get really difficult to do things like this if you're just doing it traditionally. I'm not being paid by anybody. I'm not sponsored by anybody. So I'm letting you know that an easy way to do this is with a program called Viveza. And it's by Nik Software, N-I-K, Nik Software. And the program's Viveza. It makes doing stuff like this much easier. You just copy and paste. It's got this little dropper, little area where you peg and you say, everything that looks like this, I want in red. And then you just widen up the area and it'll do that for you. Here is a bride, typical bride who didn't get enough sleep, which is pretty much every bride that I have. They're always up until 3 o'clock in the morning and they didn't get enough rest. And she's absolutely stunning, super skinny, didn't need any work except, here you can tell that she didn't get a lot of work, a lot of rest. Her eyes are a little bit dull. And so I went in and I photoshopped her eyes. I made the eyes brighter, the iris is brighter, brightened up this whole area, retouched any bags or wrinkles under the eyes. And here we brightened up the whole image just a little bit more to give it an airier feel. This is one of my favorite images, and clients of mine become obsessed with this image. Here we have a very bright wall and a very dark wall and a beautiful bride in between. And here we just darkened this wall, darkened the sky, brightened this wall, and added structure to the dress and slimmed her out just a little bit and lengthened her out. So do you see how I made her a little bit taller? That adds, that makes somebody a little bit thinner looking. So darkened the sky, brightened up this wall, darkened this wall, added structure to the dress. A lot of times all the detail from the dress just gets lost. So this is something that I like to do. There you go. And this was done mostly with Viveza and in Photoshop with structure. So here is another bride. Again, these little problem areas, maybe, bring in the waist a little and thin out that arm a little bit, just like that. Makes a big difference. Here I made the image brighter. I like a little contrast. I like a little vibrancy in my photos, so that's what I do. And here is a very typical shot. Again, people never think about this when they're picking their venues, is how does a light look? How is a picture going to look in camera? Here the girls are just practically gone in the shadow, and the guys, it's very bright here on this side. And she's in the shadow with some weird light on her cheek. And these kind of issues come up constantly when we're shooting weddings. Especially when there's trees and stuff around, it can become really problematic. So here I brightened all those shadows up, and I got her to come up a lot more also, but we kept the guys even. And I used Viveza, and you can also use bring up the shadows in Photoshop under image. So that's something that I do pretty much regularly, because ceremony sites, especially outdoor ceremony sites, the light is always coming from some awful location. It's rarely at the right time of day, which is an hour or two before sunset, and there's always trees and stuff all around. It just becomes difficult for shooting. So here is another time when we had to shoot at the wrong time of day. I usually make the schedule for my clients, and I don't allow for wrong time of day shooting, but sometimes it just has to happen for whatever reason, and we're shooting at the wrong time of day. And this is like midday bright daylight, and they're in the shade, and here's all this bright daylight. And so what I like to do is I like to brighten up these shadows and darken these sunlit areas to give it a little bit more balanced look. And you can do this in Photoshop again with image highlight and shadow area. But what you can tell your photographer is that you want all the bright areas darkened just a bit and all the shadow areas brought up just a little bit. And here, of course, I thinned her out, gave her a little bit smaller waist. She's very thin, but it does make a difference when you do this. And here we have distracting things going on in the background. This is at Laguna Beach on the boardwalk, and the light was coming in from this direction, so I had to remove these distractions here because this image came out really nice. And then again, adding some contrast and some vibrancy. And here again, distracting objects in the back of this shot. This is at a hotel near Disneyland, and these are the Disneyland fireworks, and it looks beautiful, but this is just not beautiful. And these distractions here, I can't stand things like this. I usually try to get rid of as much as possible. So here, you know what? The one I gave her later had these removed. But I did remove the girl from this image. And in the image that she ordered, I removed all of these things here. I even removed this. So try to remove as many distractions as you can, or ask for your photographer to do that. Removing distractions like this definitely gets more expensive. That's something that's usually an additional charge. Again, I do it for my clients for their albums. I'm a OCD. I'm a total neurotic freak, and I don't ever send my images out for retouching. I do everything myself. So here you can see that it's that annoyance is gone. And this is one of my favorite images. It had rained right before it was supposed to be ceremony time, and we got these beautiful clouds in the background. But when you normally take a photograph like this, you're not going to see all of these clouds and how beautiful they are. So this is my off-camera flash. I'm pointing it directly at my bride so that you get some beautiful shadows, and there's no flat lighting. I don't like flat lighting. It really bothers me. And then here, because we're in the middle of all these tall grasses up in the hills of Santa Barbara, you see that they're caught here on the dress. So brought that dress down, slimmed the bride up just a little bit, not much. She's gorgeous. She's absolutely stunning, and brought up all those clouds in the background. A lot of this was done with Viveza, and then some of the little details were brought in using Photoshop. So then I darkened the whole thing up a little bit and brightened her up a little bit so she really stands out, and this image becomes really dramatic and really beautiful. And here is the dreaded back fat. Oh, the dreaded, I can't tell you how many phone calls I've received from people all over the US asking if I can Photoshop their back fat, because I have a blog out about the dreaded back fat. So here, this always happens. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a pose showing off the beautiful corset and your beautiful dress. Of course, you want to have these poses, and you don't need to be feeling insecure about this, because you can fix it pretty easily in Photoshop. So here I fixed it. You can fix it to how much like however you want it. You can make the arms a little thicker, a little thinner, the waist a little smaller, a little less. You can go as crazy as you want or not as crazy. You can just literally make very little difference and just bring this part in and not change anything else. But I like to get rid of tan lines and things like that. So there you go. Again, added some vibrancy, brought up her chin just a little bit here too. And here is the same sort of thing. Here is my off-camera flash. Here is my beautiful bride on a gorgeous stormy day. Thinned out her waist. So here's the before. Here's the after. Here we brought up the clouds using that program Viveza. And we can go a little bit more exaggerated, add some drama by adding a vignette in the background, adding more contrast to those clouds, darkening some stuff up, and making sure that the structure of the dress is still intact. This was one of my favorites. I just made the album for this couple just this last week. And I loved this photograph, and I didn't choose any of the images because I think that they thought, oh, well, all this is just dark in the background. So I went in and I added this image because I knew what could be done. And a lot of times as a photographer, we shoot because we know what we can do with this image. And this image is really dark here because I shot it with some very bright light on this side so I don't lose this. So I balanced this bride and this groom with this area, because if you shoot for them in the shadow, you'll get all of this, but you'll lose this. And I did not want to lose this because this is very beautiful. So this is a little bit more technical shooting. Off camera flash, brought in this so you can see it, and then here you can see what a difference that makes. Using Viveza, I went in and brightened and added structure and vibrancy to all this area so that I could have it a little bit more balanced with everything else here. Look at how gorgeous that difference is. Before, after. Huge difference. So a lot of times I allow my clients to choose their images for their albums, unless they've taken 10 years to choose their images. In that case, I'll go in and choose it for them. But a lot of the times I wish that they would allow me to choose their images, because I think, a lot of times people don't know the possibility of an image. When I get in there and I retouch an image and Photoshop an image and go in and open up the shadows, you can see that there is a huge difference in this image. And, if you passed this by, you wouldn't have even noticed it. But I know what's there, So here we can retouch acne pretty easily. There's 2 different samples of how that can be done. And there's different times when I'll go in and do different things. Like here, I can retouch a nose, I can widen lips. There's a lot of different things you can do. These are 2 different techniques that I used. Here I used a program called RadLab, and this is their Pro Retouch. And you don't need that. You can also go in and do it by hand with just cloning. You can clone using different modules, such as cloning with highlights and shadows. But there's the before, after using regular cloning, and this is using RadLab. But I also went in and retouched the nose and brought up the lips. You can do all kinds of different stuff. I would normally not do this unless a client asked, but no one usually does. But I like to play with things and just show you the different options that can be done. Here's a gorgeous bride on a very plain day. And here are some clouds that you can add. This cloud came from a cloud bank, meaning that I purchased a bank of clouds, and the clouds are actually separate from the background. So I darkened up the sky and added the clouds, and there's so many different clouds that you can add that are just individual clouds. And then there's sky that you can add. You can also just remove the sky completely and add a new sky. But this was just the clouds because I wanted to keep the clouds here on this side. And here is a plus size bride of mine. A large majority of my brides are plus size. I'm pretty well known for retouching plus size brides because I'm chunky. I know what it feels like. I want everyone to look amazing, or at least their best. So here is a little bit of a drastic retouch. So here is the before and here is the after. And here what I did was use a layer mask. So I grab a piece of the background, I bring it on top of the bride. I go into layer and hide mask, and then I just go in and add this part right here. So it's a trickier, a little bit higher tech thing to do, and I have a video. If you go into the history of my videos, I have a video that shows you exactly how to do that if you don't know how to do it already. Gorgeous bride here. I love this photo. Retouched just a little bit there on the sides to bring her waist up a little bit, and brought up this area, brought up the shadows. This was used with Viveza here. Here again, a gorgeous bride. Thinned her down just a little bit. Everyone wants a little bit of an S curve, so I make that possible for my brides and grooms. And here I added some saturation and contrast and all that. And this is funny. So this image here is a compilation image that you can do in Photoshop. So you take a tripod and you put you take a picture of your background, how you want your background to look, and you get your people here. Actually, you get your people here first, and you lock in that setting right there, exactly where they're standing or sitting or whatever the pose is. You lock that in on your focus, and then you take this image here, and then you merge the two images. You can literally just remove it using a layer mask, and then here I went in and obviously brightened it and pushed her hair up a little bit more. But this is a very fun thing to do if you have the time to do that. And you know, if the client can't get the pose right, you can always just play around. And I found these just sitting right next to this alley. So same thing here. We can liquefy that area right there so that there's no back fat. I love doing that for all of my clients because nobody wants that in their wedding album. And here we added a cloud background. So these are stock skies that you can either purchase or you can make yourself. When there's beautiful clouds out in the sky, I go out to the beach and I shoot clouds. I go to the beach because I don't want any distractions like buildings or anything. So I go out where there's like nothing out there and I just shoot beautiful clouds. This one I purchased. It makes a big difference from this sky. This sky was, it's a beautiful day in California, but California rarely gets clouds. I mean, we don't get a lot of rain. So this is Laguna Beach. And here again, I liquefied and brought in a little bit of her waist and then brought in that beautiful sky. Here again, it's a very plain sky, and this is a beautiful image just by itself, but I definitely just thinned out the arm just a tad and added another sky. A little bit trickier to do this because you have a lot of trees here, so there's definitely a little bit of difficulty in this image, but it is absolutely possible. But something like this, if you're a bride, it's going to cost you some money to have your photographer do this. I was messing around and wanted to do it, so I did it for my bride. And here, gorgeous bride, but plain sky, so I added that cloud bank again. Some people like it, some people don't. Whatever my client wants, I'm normally willing to do. Here, this bride is over some tall grass. It's made her look very short and squatty. And so I elongated her using transform. You just grab that area and pull it down, and it's very easy. I always grab right below the flowers. So right here is where I would grab that marquee and then transform it down to make her longer and thinner so she doesn't look short and squatty. And then I just brought in the arms a little bit. Of course, adding some warmth, some vibrancy to the image is what I do, because out of camera, this is how everything looks. This is how the day really looked. When you see my images on Facebook, they look like this after some work. Here, another beautiful bride. I have that off-camera flash coming here in order to be able to get that deeper sky, but sometimes you don't get it deep enough and you don't want to make this background go any darker. So then I brightened everything up, added some contrast, saturation, darkened that sky up with that program Viveza. And then again, added a little bit more bang here, added a little more vibrancy. Here I have a beautiful bride. She's got an acne on her skin, a little tattoo here, and removed that, and then removed this. She's absolutely stunning. And then we just added warmth, because this is how the image really looked. This is how that day inside of that room really looked, but we want to add warmth and vibrancy to everything. This is one of my favorite photos to do. This is a shoot umbrella, and I put my light back here and shoot up into it so that they show up. And it's sunset time. It looks beautiful. This is a plus size bride of mine, and again, liquefied, brought everything in here. And look at how I did this. So you see how there's shadow here, but there's light here. So this makes a tummy look round. So what I do is I bring that shadow all the way up so that tummy looks thin and flat all the way up. And then I brought in the dress here on this side, brought in those arms, because everyone that has their arm up like this, if they're not 15, is going to have a little saggy arm. So lengthen them just a little bit to make them look a little thinner. Another gorgeous bride. Here's my flash, off-camera flash. She's facing in this direction. I had an assistant here that got out of the way from waving the veil. Here I removed the stand, made her slimmer. So there's the before and after, made her a little slimmer. Brought in those greens, made them deeper and brighter, because the grass just looked dead here. Even though it's a gorgeous venue, just looked a little bit dead. So I brought in Viveza and just, worked on this grass to make it darker and greener. And now I added warmth and vibrancy to the whole image. And here I added a flare. So you can purchase flares or make your own flares in Photoshop, but check out this area here. I added a warm flare to come in from that side. Flare is really in style. Trust me, in another 5 years, it'll be out of style just like everything else. Here I shot a bride and groom at this venue here, and the clouds were sort of way back there in the background. And you see here's my assistant with my off-camera flash. Removed that person, thinned her up a little bit, and then all of a sudden this makes all the difference in the world. I just darkened the whole image up, but not them. So you can do this in Viveza. You can add a vignette. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I think it makes a huge difference. Viveza will allow you to go in and specifically add darkness to whatever you want. Here, another gorgeous bride and groom. Brought in a little bit of that back fat right there. Here is another beautiful bride and groom, but it was a stormy day and that sky looked really dark. And although I love a dark sky like this, it's better if you have a little bit of drama. So here we didn't get a sunset. It was just not the kind of day where we were going to get a sunset in Laguna Beach. So I added a stock sky. This is a lot of work. You have to go in and change the color of all of the stuff here in the front, like the rocks and the ocean. And here you see this, the sunset, where the sunset would be going down the light. That's completely different from the image below. So all of that has to be done by hand. I added this sky. I thought this was a really cool, dramatic sky, and it made a big difference in this image. This is the kind of image that's just like, okay, it's a cute image. It's nice. But here you would buy a canvas from an image like this. Again, a beautiful day, already past sunset, nothing going on in the sky. Cute, sweet, fun couple. And then I added this sky. It just makes a big difference all of a sudden, and then brought up this area here. So see how dark that area is? I used Viveza to brighten up this area here. Makes a big difference all in all to these images. So that is it. That's all I have for you guys. If you want to know how I did any of these things, please comment down below. I'm happy to make a video specifically for whatever it is that you are looking for. Subscribe and like this video because that always helps. And I really appreciate you guys subscribing. Every morning that I wake up, I have a new subscriber, and that's been a lot of fun for me. I am a photographer that's been doing this for 25 years. I am extensively published and award-winning. And I just want to get some stuff out there so you guys can see what good work looks like. There's a lot of not so great work out there, and there's a lot of photographers that I mentor to lift their level of work and what they do, and I'm just trying to inspire people out there. This is not going to be for everybody. There's trends that are out there right now that are about real natural photography, no retouching, and everything just stays photojournalistic and natural. There's people out there that don't even like being posed. I am not one of those photographers. My clients love to be posed. They want to look their best. I have clients that like glam. They're into makeup and fashion, and they want to look their best, and they're into selfies. And so my client is this type of client. They do love to be photoshopped. They do love to have a smaller waist, and they want to get rid of those under eye bags and brighter teeth, and they want some drama in their sky. And so everybody has their own type of client. This isn't for everybody, but if this is something that you're looking for, I did throw out a couple of things out there. The normal things that I do use are Rad Lab to go in and add a little bit of vibrancy and snap to my photos. That's a big thing that I like to do. And Nick Viveza. I just love using Viveza. I've been using it since they came out in order to be able to isolate different areas. And I think that those are things that you would really love. I do use a lot of liquify in Photoshop. I do bring up highlights and shadows. I do go in and do a lot of brush work with cloning. So anyways, guys, have a great day. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will talk to you guys soon.